Hello, future educators. This presentation focuses on portfolio assessment methods. Please note that the content of this presentation is summarized and lifted from the Guzman Santos Advanced Methods in Educational Assessment and Evaluation and is presented by yours truly, a faculty of the University of St. Louis, Tuguegarao City. Portfolio assessment is one of the several authentic and non-traditional assessment techniques in education. It is authentic as it assesses students' growth and development in school. A portfolio is a purposeful collection of student work that displays the student's efforts, progress, and achievements in one or more areas. The collection must include student participation in selecting contents, the criteria for selection, the criteria for judging merit, and evidence of student self-reflection. Within the context of this definition, a portfolio continually grows and accumulates as the student progresses in the particular learning task. Each addition to the portfolio is carefully planned and selected by the student and demonstrates this progress. In fact, the overall purpose of creating a portfolio is to enable the student to demonstrate to others their learning and progress. The greatest value of portfolios is that, in building them, students become active participants in the learning process and its assessment. Portfolio assessment possesses several features and essential characteristics. First, a portfolio is a form of assessment that students do together with their teachers. The teachers guide the students in the planning, execution, and evaluation of the contents of the portfolio. Together, they formulate the overall objectives for constructing the portfolio. As such, students and teachers interact in every step of the process of developing a portfolio. Second, a portfolio represents a selection of what the students believe are best included from among the possible collection of things related to the concept being studied. It is the teacher's responsibility to assist the students in actually choosing from among a possible set of choices to be included in the portfolio. However, the final selection should be done by the students themselves, since the portfolio represents what the students believe are important considerations. Third and last, a portfolio provides samples of the students' work which show growth over time. By reflecting on their own learning, this is what we call self-assessment, students begin to identify the strengths and weaknesses in their work. These weaknesses then become improvement goals. Remember that if the criteria are not clear at the beginning, then there is a tendency to include among unessential components in the portfolio and to include those which happen to be available at the time the portfolio is prepared. At each step of the process, the students need to refer to the agreed set of criteria for the construction and development of the portfolio. As Birgin puts it, portfolio is the assessment of some data about students' skills in one or more areas in a certain time period, regular collection of his studies, and performances according to predetermined criteria. Why should we resort to portfolio assessment methods? This question interests both professional and pre-service teachers. To answer this question, the purposes and rationale for the use of portfolio assessment have to be examined. First, portfolio assessment matches assessment to teaching. The final outputs to be assessed are products of classroom discussions and classroom work, and are not simple diversions from the tedium of classroom activities. Unlike test items, which mainly measure cognitive skills, portfolio assessment can assess other components of the student's formed abilities based on classroom discussions. Second, portfolio assessment has clear goals. In fact, goals are decided at the beginning of instruction and are clear to teacher and students alike. In cognitive testing, the objectives are identified at the beginning, but the actual items may or may not reflect achievement of such objectives. In portfolio assessment, however, the students control the items to be included and therefore are assured that the goals are achieved. Third, portfolio assessment gives a profile of learner abilities in terms of depth, breadth, and growth. In terms of depth, portfolio assessment enables the students to demonstrate quality work done without pressure and constraints of time present in traditional testing through the help of resources such as reference materials and the help of other students. In terms of breadth, portfolio assessment can show a wide range of skills to be demonstrated in the final output. Finally, in terms of growth, portfolio assessment shows efforts to improve and develop and clearly demonstrates students' progress over time. Fourth, portfolio assessment is a tool for assessing a variety of skills not normally testable in a single setting for traditional testing. The portfolio can show written, oral, and graphic outputs of students in a variety of ways, which demonstrate skills developed by the students. Fifth, portfolio assessment develops awareness of own learning by the students, thus the metacognitive development. Students have to reflect on their own progress and the quality of their work in relation to known goals. This is achieved at each stage of the process, since the students continually refer to the set of goals and objectives set at the beginning. Sixth, portfolio assessment caters to individuals in a heterogeneous class. Such a flexibility is attributed to the fact that portfolio assessment is open-ended so that students can demonstrate their abilities on their own level and caters to differential learning styles and expression of varying strengths. Seventh, portfolio assessment develops social skills. Students interact with other students in the development of their own portfolios. Sometimes they are assessed on work done in groups or in pairs so that they necessarily have to interact and collaborate to complete the tasks. 8. Portfolio assessment develops independent and active learners. Students must select and justify portfolio choices, monitor progress, and set learning goals. Traditional testing cannot achieve this educational objective no matter how skillfully the tests are constructed. Ninth, portfolio assessment can improve motivation for learning and thus achievement. When students are empowered to prove their own achievement and worth, they become highly motivated to pursue the learning tasks. It is when they lose this feeling of empowerment that they feel inadequate and become less motivated as in traditional classroom setting. Finally, portfolio assessment provides the opportunity for student-teacher dialogue, conversation, or conference. It enables the teacher to get to know every student. Moreover, portfolio assessment promotes joint goal setting and negotiation of grades, which can never happen in traditional testing. What are the essential elements of the portfolio? Every portfolio must contain the following essential elements. First is the cover letter. This page is about the author who is the student. This page contains a write-up of the student about his or her progress as a learner. Please note that this is written at the end but put at the beginning of the portfolio. The cover letter summarizes the evidence of a student's learning and progress. Second is a table of contents with numbered pages. Third are the entries, both core or items students have to include and optional or items of student's choice. The core elements will be required for each student and will provide a common base from which to make decisions on assessment. The optional items will allow the portfolio folder to represent the uniqueness of each student. Students can choose to include the best pieces of work, but also a piece of work which gave trouble or one that was less successful and give reasons why. Fourth are dates on all entries to facilitate proof of growth over time. Fifth are drafts of oral and written products and revised versions. For instance, the first drafts and corrected revised versions of learning outputs. Lastly, are reflections that which can appear at different stages in the learning process for formative and or summative purposes, and at the lower levels can be written in the mother tongue or by students who find it difficult to express themselves in English. For each item of the reflections, a brief rationale for choosing the item should be included. These can relate to students' performance, to their feelings as regards their progress, and or themselves as learners. Students can choose to reflect upon some or all of the following guide questions. What did I learn from it? What did I do well? Why did I choose this item? What do I want to improve in the item? How do I feel about my performance? And what were the problem areas? Implementing portfolio assessment involves several stages. First is the identification of teaching goals to assess through the portfolio. Second is the orientation of students as regards the specifics of portfolio assessment. Third is the specification of the content or essential elements of the portfolio. Fourth is the setting of clear and detailed guidelines for portfolio presentation. Fifth is the notification of key school officials, parents, and other concerned school stakeholders as regards the implementation of portfolio assessment. Lastly is the development of the portfolio. The succeeding slides explain each of these stages. The usual first step of organizing portfolio assessment is to establish the teaching goals. It is very important at this stage to be very clear about what the teacher hopes to achieve in teaching. These goals will guide the selection and assessment of a student's work for the portfolio. In order to do this, the teacher should ask himself the question, what do I want the students to learn? And choose several goals to focus on. For example, general goals such as improvement in fluency of speech or independent reading, and specific goals such as scanning a text or telling a story. The Revised Basic Education Curriculum, or RBEC, contains many examples of goals called benchmarks that show progress towards the overall standards of a subject matter to be learned. It is often suggested that this stage be done together with the students, asking them what they want and what they need to learn in the particular subject matter. Portfolio assessment is a new thing for many students who are used to traditional testing. For this reason, it is important for the teacher to introduce the concept to the class. Perhaps he can start by explaining the meaning of the word portfolio from portare, which means carry, and folio, which refers to a sheet of paper. If you can invite artists or architects to come and visit your class, bringing with them their own set of portfolios, then this will help convey the principle of a portfolio as a selection of a student's work, showing progress in different areas or skills. It is also a good idea to show the students examples of existing portfolios prepared by other classes or by other students. If you have your own portfolio, then this will also help in conveying the information to the students. This is called an exemplar method. In order to convince your students that portfolio assessment is worth a try, ask them to enumerate their problems with traditional testing. Tell them that portfolio assessment will assess them in a much fairer way than traditional testing would. It is also important to inform the students how much weight the portfolio will have in the computation of their final grades and just what is going to be replaced by the portfolio. Next stage is to specify what and how much have to be included in the portfolio, both core and options. It is important to include options as these enable self-expression and independence. Specify for each entry how it will be assessed. The students should be acquainted with the scoring guides or rating scales that will be used before performing the task. Portfolio entries can take many forms: written, audio, and video recorded items or learning artifacts. Examples of these include an annotated drawing, a model, dialogue journals, or any tangible evidence of learning. There is a tendency for students to present as much evidence of learning as they can when left on their own. The teacher must therefore set clear guidelines and detailed information on how the portfolios will be presented. Explain the need for clear and attractive dated drafts, attached reflections, or comment cards. Moreover, it will help if the teacher explains how the portfolio will be graded and when it needs to be ready for final and midway dates. Do not attempt to use the portfolio assessment method without notifying your department head, dean, or principal. This will serve as a precaution in case students will later complain or raise important concerns about this assessment procedure. Lastly, both students and teachers need support and encouragement at their stage in the process of portfolio development. The students, particularly, should get this from an understanding and patient teacher. Teachers will get it by doing portfolio assessment as teamwork in their staff or joining or initiating a support group to discuss questions with colleagues as they arise. Some portion of the class time can be devoted to student-teacher dialogues, conversations, and conferences with other teachers related to the task of preparing the portfolio, or parents of students may also be involved. It is necessary to stress the importance of reflection and self-assessment while preparing the portfolio itself, since these are essentially new skills for the students. Reflection and self-assessment require practice. There are certain essential questions that the teachers can use to guide students in reflections and self-assessment, such as: what did I learn from that activity? Which is my best piece? How can I improve this? This question can be done by class brainstorming or in pairs called portfolio partners, who can help each other select samples of their work. Initially, it is advised that teachers have to begin with more guided and closed forms of reflection and slowly proceed to more open reflective comments. Writing reflections is a life skill that is very essential for the students and is therefore time well spent for the teacher. Finally, since portfolios are essentially done by the students outside of the regular class time, teachers need to ensure that indeed the portfolio represents the student's work and accomplishment. In order to do this, require that some items be done completely in class. You might decide to have a test, preferably with a corrected version, included as a core item together with reflection on what the student learned from doing the test and revising it. Furthermore, you may ask the students to explain in their reflections who helped them to improve their work, be it a peer, a parent, a spell checker, and what they learned from revising their work. There are three types of portfolios. First is the documentation portfolio. As the name implies, this approach involves a collection of work over time showing growth and improvement, reflecting students' learning of identified outcomes. This portfolio is also called a growth portfolio in the literature. The documentation portfolio can include everything from brainstorming activities to drafts to finished products. The collection becomes meaningful when specific items are selected out to focus on particular educational experiences or goals. It can include the best and weakest of student work. It is important to realize here that even drafts and scratch papers should be included in the portfolio, for they actually demonstrate the growth process that the students have been through. Second is the process portfolio. The process portfolio, in contrast, demonstrates all facets or phases of the learning process. As such, these portfolios contain an extensive number of reflective journals, think logs, and other related forms of metacognitive processing. They are particularly useful in documenting students' overall learning process. It can show how students integrate specific knowledge or skills and progress towards both basic and advanced mastery. The last type is the showcase portfolio. The showcase portfolio only shows the best of the students' outputs and products. As such, this type of portfolio is best used for the summative evaluation of students' mastery of key curriculum outcomes. It should include students' very best work, determined through a combination of student and teacher selection. Only completed work should be included. In addition, this type of portfolio is especially compatible with audiovisual artifacts development, including photographs, videotapes, and electronic records of students' completed work. The showcase portfolio should also include written analysis and reflections by the student upon the decision-making processes used to determine which works are included. Paulson and Mayer state that portfolios offer a way of assessing student learning that is different from the traditional methods. Portfolio assessment provides the teacher and students an opportunity to observe students in a broader context, taking risks, developing creative solutions, and learning to make judgments about their own performances. Detailed rating criteria may be evolved to evaluate the finished portfolio presented by students. In general, however, they should include the following. First is thoughtfulness, which includes evidence of students' monitoring of their own comprehension, metacognitive reflection, and productive habits of mind. Second is growth and development in relationship to key curriculum expectancies, indicators, learning outcomes, and objectives. Third is understanding and application of key processes in the preparation of the portfolio. Fourth is completeness, correctness, and appropriateness of learning products and processes presented in the portfolio. And finally, the diversity of entries. For example, is the use of multiple formats to demonstrate achievement of designated performance standards. In evolving evaluation criteria, teachers and students must work together and agree on the criteria to be applied to the portfolio. Such evaluative criteria need to be set and agreed upon prior to the development of the portfolio. The criteria themselves will serve as guide to students when they actually prepare the portfolio requirement. The criteria to be used may be formative or throughout an instruction time period and/or summative or as part of a culminating project, activity, or related assessment to determine the extent to which identified curricular expectancies, indicators, standards, learning outcomes, and objectives have been attained. One of the more significant aspects of portfolio assessment is its collaborative approach, in which students and teacher worked together to identify especially significant or important artifacts and processes to be captured in the portfolio. In traditional testing, students do not have any influence nor significant inputs as to what the teacher will ask in the test items. Moreover, students and teachers work collaboratively to determine grades or scores to be assigned. In this particular dimension, rubrics, rules, and scoring keys can be designed for a variety of portfolio components. In addition, letter grades might also be assigned where appropriate. It is especially recommended that for summative purposes, a panel of interviewers be designated to evaluate the student's portfolio based on the agreed set of criteria at the beginning. It is important that the panel of interviewers understand the decision-making process that the student underwent in selecting the items to be included in the finished portfolio. Each portfolio entry needs to be assessed with reference to its specific goals. Since the goals and weighting of the various portfolio components have been clearly fixed in advance, assessing the portfolios is not difficult. Self and peer assessment can be used as a tool for formative evaluation, with the students having to justify their grade with reference to the goals and to specific pages in the portfolio. This actually makes the teacher's job of assessing the portfolio much simpler because the student has done the groundwork of proving how far each goal is met in the portfolio. It takes some of the burdens of the teacher and helps students to internalize criteria for quality work. After all the efforts that your students have invested in their portfolios, it is recommended that the teacher provides feedback on the portfolios that is more than just a grade. One possibility is to write a letter about the portfolio which details strengths and weaknesses and generates a profile of a student's ability which is then added to the portfolio. Another option is to prepare certificates that comment on the portfolio strengths and suggest future goals. Finally, the teacher needs to give guiding feedback. The finished portfolio may be due only at the end of the semester or grading period, but it is a good idea to set regular dates at which time several portfolio-ready items with drafts and reflections will be handed in so that students know whether they are on the right track. Alternatively, you can have a portfolio project on a single unit of material so that both teacher and students will acquire experience in this kind of assessment over a shorter period of time. The main philosophy embedded in portfolio assessment is shared and active assessment. To this end, the teacher should have short individual meetings with each learner, in which progress is discussed and goals are set for a future meeting. Throughout the process, the students are and the teacher keeps careful documentation of the meetings, noting the significant agreements and findings in each individual session. Through the meetings of this kind, the formative evaluation process for portfolio assessment is facilitated. Indeed, the use of portfolio assessment is time-consuming, but in the end, the gains are well worth the time of the teacher. Finally, student-teacher conferences can also be used for summative evaluation purposes when the student presents his final portfolio product and where final grades are determined together with the teacher. Even at this stage of the process, students can negotiate for the appropriate grade to be given using as evidence the minutes of the regular student-teacher conferences. It is for this reason that notes from these conferences have been included in the portfolio as they contain joint decisions about the individual's strengths and weaknesses. These conferences can be prepared for in pairs, where students practice presenting their portfolios. Thank you for taking time to listen and watch this video lecture on portfolio assessment. Always remember that portfolios provide students the opportunity to exhibit their efforts, progress, and achievements, all for quality learning. Again, the content of this presentation is lifted from the Guzman Santos Advanced Methods in Educational Assessment and Evaluation, and is presented by yours truly, a faculty of the University of St. Louis, Tuguegarao City.